and welcome to WEC Talk, the podcast series from the FIA World Endurance Championship. I'm Martin Haven. In this episode, we catch up with Aston Martin's Nicki Thiim, soon to become a dad for the first time. Goodyear's Ben Crawley tells us how tyre companies are dealing with lockdown and their plans to ensure they're ready for racing to resume. In the Beckett briefing, Louise brings us up to speed with what's been happening this week. But first, we talk to the man responsible for Porsche's factory GT motorsport programmes. First guest is a French engineer who cut his motorsport teeth in DTM with Opel and then Audi before joining Porsche as part of the ultra-successful LMP1 project. Since 2018, he's been responsible for both the GT programmes and Porsche's Formula E team. Welcome, Pascal Zurlinden.
Hello, everyone. Nice to be with you today.
Pascal, where is home for you?
Home for me is next to Porsche's heart, which is Weissach, so next to Stuttgart in Germany.
What is going on at the moment? Is the entire Weissach plant in complete shutdown? Is there a skeleton crew doing maintenance? What's going on there?
The development at the end never stops. So many people are working from home, as I am doing in home office, working with the new digital technologies and staying in contact and still being really efficient in our work. We have some people who are working back at the workshop, but the crew is a little bit smaller in order to be able to respect the distancing rules. And at the end, everything is going on as usual. For everything where you need to have people in a group, this is a bit slower than usual, but everything is going on.
Race engineers, of course, are used to setting up shop in remote locations. Has that made it easier to adapt to doing everything from home?
Definitely, we were already used a bit to work from home because we are often traveling and you are working from the airplane, being online or from airports or from hotels. But I have to say that I discovered myself some new tools and new technologies which make my life probably in the future when I'm traveling much easier to stay connected to all the guys working back in Weissach or anywhere in the world, just being connected.
On the GT racing side of your job, what programs are you responsible for? Because Porsche GT cars race in almost every country on the planet.
Then I'm responsible for two main projects, which is the RSR project, where we have clients and also two works teams. But also in GT3, I'm responsible for the development of the car as for the RSR, but also when we are supporting some teams for big events or big championships. From a white piece of paper until we get probably a championship win or a cup in our museum or in the hands of our customers. This would be a good picture of what my group is working on.
That is enormous responsibility. Now, Porsche's GT racing has always been part of its DNA, if you like. Porsche sports cars have been raced from the very early days. Is that a feeling within the company that everybody has, that you've got to remain racing?
Definitely. At the end, motorsport is really part of our DNA and is in any strategy. If you speak about our strategy for 2025 or now the strategy which are just building up to 2030, motorsport is always a part of these strategies. If you look in our museum, at the end, you see cars from any generation. At the end, there is always a link between our road car and our motorsport. You see it now also. We spoke about what are the people doing back in Weissach. If we say back in Porsche Motorsport, at the end in Porsche Motorsport, we are also developing road cars. But even from my group, speaking personally, I have people now helping out other departments in the road car departments because we have a bit less racing to do at the moment. And so motorsport and road car business is really one at Porsche.
Porsche customer loyalty is legendary because Porsche customer service is so exceptional. What impresses you most about Porsche's racing customers?
What is really impressive is that we have customers that are all since 25 years or even longer customers from Porsche. But probably there is one difference to many other brands. If you come to Porsche and you have a Porsche which is 20 or 30 years old, you still get a service and you still get parts. And probably this is something which is really special if you speak about Porsche Motorsport. We are like a big family.
Now, you came into Porsche as part of the LMP1 project. Obviously, that's a very different technology to the GT programs, but how much carryover from that LMP1 car has there been into the GT car's DNA?
I would say it's less carryover of single parts, but it's more about the thinking, the philosophy behind. You go to a race, to an endurance race, and you need to be sure that every details has been checked, that you are sure that you don't get any issues in the race, that you thought about every single thing. And that is probably a spirit which we went over from our LMP1 program, where we developed there, and which came now in all the programs I'm in. At the end, the idea is, what can we do better for next race? Even if we win, there are always things to improve. And I think this spirit is now in all the programs we are doing.
You talked about Weissach, the hub, the center of Porsche's motorsport, right from the early days. It's also become a very big production facility, hasn't it? Because you make so many, particularly GT race cars. Do you know how many GT3, GTE cars have been made?
I would start now with the GT3R, which is our main customer car from the programs I'm looking after. The GT3R, we brought a brand new one last year for 2019. And in the first year, we sold nearly 70 cars, which was really a great performance from everyone. Then speaking about our GTE cars, we will sell 10 cars this year, or they are nearly sold, and they will be delivered in the summer.
So you've got a big staff there, you've got the design, you've got Porsche Kundendienst looking after people at the tracks, servicing across the globe. Now, obviously, you've got a works team in World Endurance, you've got factory-backed team in the WeatherTech IMSA series, but where else? Where else are your big markets for customer racing?
I think customer racing, you can't speak anymore about markets. It's all global. So we have customers in Australia, we have customers in Japan, we have customers in Malaysia, in China. It's really everywhere in the world. So now you cannot speak anymore about single countries. It's really a global racing.
Obviously, everybody is now trying to plan for the moment we get that green light and things can start again. How long is it going to take before you are fully back up to speed, do you think?
Then I think that everything can be back to speed within 2 weeks, I would say. The biggest question is not when we can be back to speed, is when will be the planes and everything which is around us back to speed, and all the logistic for human but also for material. This will be the biggest question mark.
Looking at the World Endurance calendar, we're looking at hopefully going to Spa for the 6 hours in August, and then Le Mans in September. Now, I don't think there's anybody involved in sports car racing that would have been at the last Le Mans in September. What do you think is going to be the biggest significant change in how the race plays out later in the year?
For us, it will be something brand new. At the end, we have a lot of experience over years in Le Mans in June. But in September, temperature will be lower. The night will be longer. So we'll have really to adapt quickly. We have also a major change for Porsche Motorsport this year. Our factory team will bring our brand new RSR 19, the first time to Le Mans. And this in a period of the year where we have no experience. But we accepted the challenge and we are really looking forward to it. We all can't wait to go back on the racetrack, seeing all our fans and all our colleagues also from the different brands, and seeing that everyone is fit and back in the normal ongoing life. But at the moment, the most important thing is health, and that's what we are looking at the end, the health of everyone, and this is the most important.
Next, we learn a little more about the logistics of supplying tyres to the World Endurance Championship. How on earth do you ensure you have the right selection of tyres to suit all the demands of competitors, circuit and weather? The man with the answers, Ben Crawley from Goodyear.
Today I'm in sunny Birmingham in the UK. Obviously, undertaking lockdown, as many of your listeners currently are as well.
Now, we've talked about the problems of choosing the right tyre selection to go to the circuits for your various different competitors. Your job covers Europe, Middle East, and Asia. So you've got a huge range of different tracks, conditions, demands from different cars. Presumably, you already for season 8 had a lead time of tires that you were due to take to the various different tracks, because presumably they're all slightly, or is slightly the wrong word, are they all very different?
The way the technical and sporting regulations for the WEC Championship work is that you have 3 dry tyre specifications, an intermediate spec and a wet spec. And the intermediate and wet can go everywhere, and that is one specification for each of those different types of tyre, regardless of racetrack or location globally. And on the dry specification side, you have 3 different specifications, of which you have to specify 2 of the 3 per individual event. What we really focus on in our tyre development is wide operating windows, taking into account the different abrasiveness of a circuit, the different length of a race, potentially the different temperatures, different weather conditions. So the tyres, not only in endurance racing, have to be very long lasting and all of the kind of performance parameters that is the great challenge for tyre manufacturers, but they have to be so adaptable and flexible to cater for so many of those different permutations and variables.
Would you normally be manufacturing tyres now for later in the season, or have they already been manufactured?
It can vary, to be honest, across the season. Obviously, we're working with, let's say, defined and frozen specifications prior to the beginning of a season. There is a schedule of a rolling production plan. Now, the lead time, obviously, fans and and pundits alike might think that we just click our fingers and we're there in wherever the location is with the required tyres. But there's obviously a detailed plan that goes behind that in terms of a whole shipping schedule. To get tyres from the right manufacturing site. We're producing everything out of our Hanau manufacturing facility in Germany for all of the World Endurance Championship activities, and then obviously shipping where needed as part of the overall infrastructure that goes around the globe supporting the championship.
And of course, you also support European Le Mans Series as well. So that's another whole different set of logistics and stacks of tires and production to be planned as well. And what's the shelf life of a racing tire? How long from when they're made before they start to deteriorate and really aren't raceable anymore?
We don't actually talk about shelf lives or best befores from a tyre manufacturer point of view at Goodyear. Typically, what you would see more about, and this is very similar to the road tyres that people would produce, is it's far more about the conditions that the tyres have been stored in than the age of the tyre. In many ways, think of it like how you can have a good quality wine, but if you don't treat it and store it and keep it in the right conditions, then it can very quickly deteriorate. Likewise, if you keep it in the right conditions and preserve it and maintain it in all the key criteria that you need to follow, it can progress and perform very well with age. And some of those things would be around making sure that they're stored without any direct sunlight, making sure that there's no humidity or very low levels of humidity, and making sure that there's a kind of constant temperature, 15 to 20 degrees ambient temperature, making sure that the tyres are stored in controlled temperature conditions. So from that point of view, it's much more about the condition than the age of the tyre.
I like the fine wines. That's very good. Now, what about the tyres that presumably had already been shipped for Super Sebring? Will they go and now be used in other racetracks?
Yeah, and obviously with the current plan in terms of how to finish the current season 8, there's obviously a few events left that are hopefully going to be rescheduled and replaced in the calendar. And obviously those tyres, I think the tyres that were already at the circuit in Sebring ready to be used arrived back in the last few days into Germany. In reality, those tyres can get used across any of the remaining 3 events that are currently planned in terms of Spa, Le Mans, and then Bahrain to finish the season.
You mentioned the two magic words, Le Mans. With the race now scheduled for mid-September, how much is that likely to affect the selection of tyres that you'll take to Le Mans?
The first thing I would say is, yes, there could be temperature differences September versus June. I think what history shows us, and we've worked under such a variety of conditions, even in what might be termed a more typical summer month for Le Mans, and obviously the June schedule, whether that's sort of single digit temperatures up to 30 degrees plus in terms of ambient temperatures, and that's before you convert it into what may be track temperatures. So from that perspective, we have a very large objective in terms of working window of our tyre specifications that they need to be able to perform and adapt to. Now, you might say and expect in September that we would see some, in general, cooler temperatures, and probably for longer in terms of some of those periods, perhaps some more nighttime hours. I think what they've introduced with some of the free practice earlier in the new weekly schedule building up to Le Mans is going to be absolutely vital in terms of teams optimizing setup and drivers becoming more familiar with that. I think what we could see is one of the, let's say, one of the faster or quicker Le Mans in recent history, because typically with cooler temperatures comes an expectation of drivers and teams being able to opt for a greater balance or focus on some of the softer specification tyres that we would have. So from that point of view, obviously the cooler the conditions, the potential for those tyres to perform to their absolute maximum. And from that point of view, you could be looking at potentially fewer pit stops or shorter pit stops, not requiring tyres being changed perhaps as often as they would ordinarily. And obviously using softer tyres, the expectation of faster speed. So from that point of view, it could be a very fast September Le Mans.
Wow. Now that is a fascinating prospect. That's something I have to say that I hadn't really focused on. So yeah, maybe the fastest Le Mans ever. That could be, if it's dry.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting about the different weather patterns, because obviously we have a load of modeling systems that we can plug in historic weather temperatures. But even, I mean, Le Mans from June, it really can vary quite considerably year to year, day to night. Only having 3 specifications for the whole season with the variety of different circuits and things, it's a real technical challenge to get products that can perform to such a wide operating window in terms of temperatures, but also track characteristics and things as well. It's, that's part of the fascination and challenge for tyre manufacturers in terms of what endurance racing and the FIA WEC brings.
Time now to catch up with our Louise Beckett for the weekly Beckett briefing. Louise, how are you?
Hello, Martin. I'm good, thank you.
We've had some interesting chat from Porsche's Pascal Zurlinden and also from Goodyear's Ben Crawley about getting restarted and the prospects of Le Mans later in the year. And you've been talking to Michelin as well about their program and how they're going to approach what remains of our season.
Yes, I have. But first of all, isn't that interesting about this could be the fastest Le Mans?
Well, do you know, that was almost a throwaway comment right at the end. And I thought that's something I really hadn't focused on.
The penny hadn't dropped, no.
I was just sort of expecting colder, wetter, more crashes.
Yeah.
I hadn't really thought about running soft and very soft tyres quite as extensively as he's projecting that they might. So that could be fascinating.
Really could. Well, as you said, I spoke to Michelin and they are not too worried, as Ben was saying, in terms of the good thing is that because the teams are restricted on what tyre choices they can have, for them to take numbers to Le Mans is not going to be too much of an issue. They have a 2-month lead up time to prepare for Le Mans. And their factory is actually back already. It's obviously running at a minimum, staffing and set under all the safety regulations, but they are actually already back. And of course, we know France should be out of lockdown or to some degree on the 11th of May. So they've got plenty of time to get ready for September, which is good.
And of course, all the tyres that were shipped out to Super Sebring have all come back unused. So there is that stockpile. And
Sure.
the fact that Spa and Le Mans are both relatively close to the European bases of the tyre companies makes life a lot easier than if they were long flyaways. But what about the teams? Because the first thing, of course, that you do at Le Mans is you fit your low downforce aero kit, which no one has tested yet and possibly haven't even built yet.
Well, that's another thing about suppliers that needs to be considered. It's not, necessarily a bad thing, but it does need to be considered because they've got to create the body kit. So the carbon fiber and the composites, a lot of them come from Italy. So that's, a lot to work out for the teams and for the suppliers, how they're going to get all of that.
And that's not just Toyota, Rebellion and Ginetta in LMP1. All the LMP2 cars will be looking at a low drag rather than low downforce setup. For the GT field, much less so, because you basically just back off the wings that you've got and run as clean in the air as possible. But again, whenever the green light is to allow travel and to allow factories and businesses to open up, we are still looking at, as Pascal Zurlinden of Porsche said, a 2-week period to get them fully staffed and fully running again. Engineers are used to, they can work in the back of a truck or in the back of a garage or whatever, in any corner of the planet. So the remote working is less the issue. It's just getting production started.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I also spoke to Toyota as well, slightly going off piece, but talking about testing and on what they're planning, because obviously it's so hard to know right now what's going to be possible, but they actually do have a 3-day test planned for July. It's going to be a 30-hour simulation. They're not sure yet when, obviously, it's going to happen, and they don't know if it's going to be at Ricard or Aragon, but watch this space. Of course, they've also got to consider they may not be able to have all of their drivers there, depending if it's within Europe that we can travel, or if it's further afield, people can come over from Japan, let's say. So that's quite interesting, all these things that they need to think about.
And of course, for Toyota, it's not just the fact that you may not get your drivers, you may not get some of your engineers, your aerodynamicists, or whatever. Not everybody is based at what used to be TMG, but is now TGR, Toyota Gazoo Racing, the heart of the company in Cologne, a European base. So you're right, it might be one car rather than two, it might be 3 or 4 drivers rather than all 6, and you might have to patch together a crew to do the testing. And I wonder,
even the tracks, we still got to think about the tracks as well, if they definitely can take them for testing.
Because you've got to have medical facilities, you've got to have marshals, they've all got to travel. And of course, you can't be medevacing people into a hospital near to a racetrack if it is ram jam full of people who are, struggling to survive COVID. So having a plan, and the plan coming to fruition, as we know at the moment, may not necessarily be exactly the same thing.
May not be, but it sounds quite sensible with timing and how it's looking with, restrictions being eased up, shall I say, rather than totally gone.
How's your singing voice this evening?
Well, my singing, no, I've really got a bad, sorry. Oh, did I not tell you I had a sore throat?
All right, so we will just say a happy birthday this week to Ben Barker, to Gedo van der Gaard, and to Jose Maria Lopez.
Happy birthday, boys!
Okay, thank you, Louise. Another Beckett briefing done and dusted. We will see you next time out on WEC Talk. Finally, we head to Salzburg in Austria to catch up with one of the most colourful drivers in the WEC paddock. He's one half of the Dane train, and he's the owner of the wildest hair in motorsport. He's also due to become a father for the first time very soon, so we may need to make this quick. Welcome, Nicki Thiim.
Thank you, Martin. Hey, guys.
Hey, how are you? And how is the family?
Family is good. 1 month to go, I would say. So, crazy times, as you all know, for our experience. So, but I think it's always stay positive and really looking forward to it. A little bit nervous, I have to say. I think it's like the start of Le Mans right now. I get a little bit nervous about, I should say it's the first one, but I'm really looking forward to it.
we're almost due to be racing at Spa, and then the new baby's due. And so everybody's always not quite sure whether the baby's going to come early and you're going to be away at a racetrack. At least now you know that whenever he or she arrives, you are likely to be there and ready to go. So actually, that's quite reassuring, isn't it?
Yeah, if we have to take the positive thing about it, it's definitely that. And I have to say, as I call her the boss, she's happy that I will be there probably the first couple of months to support her. And not a bad way to start it and enjoy some family time before we go racing, hopefully soon again.
You're racing at the moment, aren't you? I mean, obviously you're still training, but you have been bringing on your sim racing game quite substantially. Is that something you've always done, or have you just got into it a little bit more recently?
I always had a passion for gaming, so I'm a big grown-up baby, I would almost say. But yeah, sim racing I always done a lot, but now a lot of other colleagues have joined me, I have to say. So at a lot of sim racing events, racing has been going on. So a lot of colleagues meet on the real track is now online. So a lot of good entertainment are brought to you, I would say.
I think it's great for the fans and for the drivers, because you see not only pro racing drivers, you see all these pro gamers as well. And obviously they are tough, aren't they? But you can race against guys that you normally wouldn't race against.
Yeah, sure. As you say, like it's people from all the way from F1 down to local, I would say, national championships that is now racing with each other and having fun on the same level. People are getting a little bit on top of it, I would say. So sometimes it needs a reality check. It is just a game and it's just for fun, but that is mainly why I'm doing it, is just to have fun with friends. As I've always been doing it, I use it quite a lot. I think it's a good way to keep your instincts up and going, not only in sim racing, but also normal games, I would say, just to keep your instincts and reflexes up, and keeps you young, I would say. It definitely keeps you young.
If you weren't sitting at home, what would you and Marco and the Aston team have been doing? Would you have had track testing? Did you have test sessions planned? What would be the normal program?
In Sebring, there was this weekend before the big weekend in Sebring. There was 2 days of testing there. Obviously, some development would have been going on there for the next upcoming season. That has obviously all been changed now. And in between Sebring and Spa, the cars will finally come back from the long tour it has been on from Asia all the way to America. That will be the first time it hits Pro Drive in Banbury in the UK again. So as the boys will be completely re-prepping the cars, I would say, before they head to Spa, which would have been soon. And as a team, I reckon we will have a sit down and talk all the way through it. Obviously, we are in a good position in the championship, so everything and everyone is coming into a big motivation boost and just doing our best. But it's hard to say right now what if and what is going to happen now. But obviously, I know the cars are back in Banbury, and the boys are prepping it like they should.
Well, the next time we race should be Spa in August, and then Le Mans in September. Now, because of the change from June to mid-September, the sunrise and sunset are both at about 7:30. So 7:30 sunset in the evening, 7:30 sunrise in the morning. So maybe 11 hours rather than sort of 6.5 or 7 hours of real darkness. And that's going to completely change the race, isn't it?
Yeah, it's fun that you mentioned it. I talked with my father about it yesterday, that if it gets pushed that far back, it's going to be a completely different race than what we are used to see in midsummer. So I must say that the darkness for us is the issue. Is more like the temperature is going to be different, and some change of weather could maybe come into play.
For the cars, for the drivers, and especially I think for the tire companies, this is going to be a real voyage into the unknown, isn't it? Because if you're looking at double and triple stinting tires, they need some data, and I'm not sure where that's coming from.
Yeah, totally agree. It's not like Le Mans. It's a track where you just go to and test, as you obviously know. You can, but it's probably not going to get far. It is unknown, but that's what we like, isn't it? Like, it's the racing. It's the unknown part of the competition, and all the factors coming into play, especially in the biggest race in the world, Le Mans. The unknown factor.
More darkness, different temperatures. Will that mean more fatigue, more potential for accidents and mistakes?
Again, the darkness doesn't really hurt us that much. I would say it's obviously, if it's more the weather factor. If it's gonna rain at certain points, obviously rain in the dark is not the easiest conditions to drive in, but it's the same for everyone. If we get those really cold conditions on top of that, that's gonna be that's where the whole team has to come together and figure out a plan how to get the best balance and performance out of it. But the darkness is more for you guys, I would say. Obviously, you want to have as much light as possible to have a good show going on television, so you can see as long as you can. Where this is going to be a little bit different, but I'm sure you guys got a great plan.
Let's hope so. Yes, definitely. I think anybody who's done the Nürburgring 24 hours, particularly the teams, will probably have a little bit more of an edge because, as we know, as Aston Martin are well aware from having done the N24 for many years, the weather there can be very vague and changeable. So, so that's it could be a little bit more like that than a classic Le Mans. Now, finally, you're at home waiting for your baby. Do you know whether you're having a boy or a girl?
It is going to be a boy, so it's going to be a Dansky Junior. But yeah, it's let's see. It's still a long way to there, but I already get those messages, as you already can figure out what they're saying now. Is that it's going to be the next generation? But I don't know. My father always said to me when I was a kid, "Nicki, please go play soccer. Don't become a racing driver." And I have that same feeling, but it ended up, as you know. But let's see. I'm just looking forward to it. It's a special moment in life, I think.
It will make this year the most memorable for all sorts of good reasons as well. Last thing then, can your wife cut hair, or are you going to look like some kind of rock god at the end of this?
When I come back at the circuit, I just don't know. Going to look like a proper Viking, I guess, Martin.
I guess you will, yes.
Beard and hair.
Yeah. Marco's not going to be able to match you in any way in the hair game, is he, like that?
No, but he is a handsome boy no matter what, isn't he? So, but I'm getting there, I have to say, Martin. I'm going to look slowly like my father. I'm slowly getting this typical gentleman moon at the back and the top, so I'm happy that I'm so tall so that people cannot look at me like that. That perspective. Yeah. It's worse things in life, isn't there? So it's all good.
Well, exactly. You just got to wait for your son to start growing a crazy hair, and then, you can go the Marco Sorensen route, same as your dad has. Exactly.
We actually having a discussion with names. So if you have any interesting, good names, then you can definitely hit me with that, or the spectators maybe.
If you put it out on social media, I'm sure you'll get some interesting suggestions.
Yeah.
That's it for this WEC Talk. We'll be back with the next one on Friday, May the 8th. Meanwhile, if you have any baby names for Nicki Thiim, you can find him on social media. Thanks for listening. We'll see you soon.